All right, so I'm going to move on and invite our new panelists, Dr. Jessica Dain, who's Superintendent of Piper Unified School District 203 in Missouri, Dr. Tanya Merrigan, Superintendent of Blue Valley School District number 229 in Kansas, and we're going to invite back in Ivy to be sort of a foil from the tech side, Belton School District, Missouri. And Ivy, I might have your title on there wrong because I think you shared a different title, but
well, it's actually changed since. So I'm the Instructional Technology Manager officially now.
Okay, then. All right. Well, it's good to have you guys with us. And I'm going to ask you, oh, good. I see all your cameras now on my other screen. So welcome. We're excited to have a discussion here about overall your digital transition. And really, then I'm going to insert questions about sort of like, what's next? You know, like, where are we going? We've done a little bit of discussion about that, but as superintendents, we want to hear from you on that side too. And then Ivy will also put her own 2 cents in there on that. So I want to ask you first, Dr. Jessica Dain, if you want to share with us what's going on with your district, your journey, and kind of what's happened with you.
Okay, well, thank you for having me here. And I just want to say we're in Kansas, not in Missouri. So if anybody wants to connect after, no problem. Just wanted to make sure that I'm representing Kansas today.
Okay.
We have, and I see that Dr. Merrigan is on as well, and a very kind of interesting story in that we're in counties that are right next to each other. However, our health department has taken a very different stance in how we educate during COVID. So it's going to be fun to have Tanya and I on here at the same time. So our health department really came down and has been very structured in what they allow during COVID. So we were only allowed to bring back 50% of students. That was the maximum no matter what. So we weren't just giving choices, but whatever the case was, we could only have a maximum of 50%. And so we took to start the journey a little bit of a look of, we really felt like we needed our youngest learners in school the most. And so our take on 50% and being creative was 50% across the district versus 50% in every building. Because we felt like from the spring that our secondary learners were more independent, could have more of the tools to handle a little bit more of a remote setting versus a kindergartner and first grader coming in that, you know, we're teaching literacy and numeracy. And at the same time, what's Canvas and what is the device? So that was the way our school opened. I will share that we were not a one-to-one district prior to this school year starting. So our teachers and kids and staff and families have had to learn one-to-one devices. They had to learn Canvas, a learning management system, along with then remote learning, live streaming, on-site, synchronous, asynchronous, all of that. So I would just say then in summary and working through that, and we've transitioned throughout the year, and I'm sure you'll ask other questions, but what was really important to us, no matter what level, was to ensure the SEL piece, the social emotional learning and mental health, that we had priority standards aligned that teachers had to hit that were just as crucial as reading, math, science, social studies, and those pieces. So we now hopefully will be having all of our kids back by March 22nd, March 23rd, but it's been a journey, but it's been very dictated by our health department.
I got it. Okay. All right. So Dr. Tanya Merrigan, can you give us a little intro?
You bet. So as Jessica said, we are in neighboring counties. Blue Valley has been in person full-time for our elementaries since about the end of September, beginning of October. We started in a hybrid model, and we were lucky to be almost at a one-to-one. And so our elementary students had devices at home, as did our middle and high school. Our middle and high school students have been either remote or hybrid throughout the year, and we're excited to bring everybody back on March 23rd as soon as we come back for fourth quarter. But what has been a big part of our journey has been, we were lucky that we already were a one-to-one, a district 612, and they took them home. We've had Canvas for several years at our middle and high schools, so that was in place. So we had the tools in place. I wouldn't say it made it easy. It made it easier. because we didn't have that huge learning curve. At elementary, they had not used Canvas, and we had one-to-one devices, but they were not taken home. So we did have a little bit of a learning curve with elementary, which is why it's been so much more successful for us to be back in full time with elementary. I would wholeheartedly concur with Dr. Dain. Our youngest learners needed to be in person. We've seen some really innovative things being done at our middle and high school through technology. And honestly, I don't know how we would have made it without technology throughout this year. It has also, though, I would say, given us an appreciation for being together and being in person. But that's where we're at right now. We're on our way to full in person, and we are very excited for that to happen come March 23rd.
Yeah, and we had some of your team on yesterday. They were awesome. You have a lucky set of people that are working with you, and I think it's the leadership that you have, probably both of you guys, in supporting you, and Ivy, you supporting your district it's really amazing. I think the Learning Council's view is that as we sort of toured the country with these events starting last April, well, after we flew into Philadelphia to do our Philadelphia event, and it was cascading loss of attendance, we had to cancel and just fly back home. Ever since then, we've been hearing just these really heartwarming stories about, like, everyone stepped up. There was almost no districts that said, okay, we're just going to shut down. Like, we're just paper packets for everyone. People went to war with this. Like, they're like, we're doing it anyway. Kids are going to learn, which is really so amazing and heartfelt. But I know that it's also been really emotional. It's been really emotional. And so as leaders, you guys have had to sort of put on the mantle of, we're going to be positive, every single day. And that's hard on you guys too. So proud of you for doing that. So Ivy, I know we heard from you earlier overall about everything that's happening with you guys. I'm going to ask you to also speak on behalf of leadership overall. So can you just repeat, are you guys all coming back or back?
So we have been, we offered in-person or virtual. So students had to pick one or the other. And so we have had students in person since August 24th.
Okay. Yeah, it's like a mosaic. I can't keep track of it all with everyone we talk to all over the country. It's kind of wild. So
it's been nice, because then a lot of districts are talking about how, well, we're coming back on March 22nd. We're coming back on March whatever. And, and so I want to say you're going to be fine, but I'm like, how do you feel about that? And because I've been doing it, and it's hard some days, but it'll be fine.
Yeah. Yeah. No, so I want to go this next round of question for you guys about kind of really what's happening in the change. So most superintendents have said, we don't feel like normal's really coming back. And some of the statistics we shared earlier is that even when you try to come back fully, 20% of students don't really want to come back. They want to have this, I want to remain virtual as much as possible. Maybe I'll join the football team and I'll come in for the art classes and stuff and science labs. But other than that, I'm just not going to be there. And I want an entirely flexible schedule. And then you have, even when you were doing all virtual, you had 35% of the kids ghosting you, like having to scramble your staff to call everybody and go, where are you? How come you're not getting online? What's going on? So you have this changed landscape. And then you also have nationally an average of somewhere between 3.6% and 15 whopping percent who've opted out for any alternative they can find. So now you're in a situation as a leader of saying, maybe we're not done with our digital transformation, and maybe we're needing to rethink our distribution model of teaching and learning, the alteration of space use and time use, and where we have teachers intersect it precisely, and the whole structure of it, because now we need to compete way more than we've ever had to compete, and we need to be something that we weren't before. And then the second most epic thing is that equity is so on the table now. And one of the biggest inequities, at least in the Learning Council's view, is that we're living in a 150-year-old manufacturing model of teaching and learning. And how do we do that? How do we shift that model towards an entirely true personalized pathways type of model. So coming back to you, Dr. Dain, what are your thoughts on next mutations, or kind of where your mind has gone in terms of more change needed?
So I will say, I think for our district, the biggest thing that's come, to the top of our discussion is a guaranteed and viable curriculum, and moving to a real competency-based learning environment that time even is going to change. So if I'm a fifth grader and I'm proficient at all of the competencies, can I move and start delving into sixth grade? Or if I'm a typical 11th grader and I have mastered all of those priority standards that we feel like the competencies a high school student needs to have before they graduate, let's start college. So let's bring in, and let's bring those pieces in. So I think one is the guaranteed and viable curriculum, competency-based, performance-based assessment. This more than anything, because teachers couldn't touch their kids. They had to figure out different ways to assess learning and how to intervene. So I think they've gotten really good at that craft, or it's brought us back to the conversation that now we need to get better. It can't just be our gut anymore. But when we didn't get to use the gut, we realized we needed to assess better. We needed to intervene, have interventions. That piece would be the first piece that comes to mind. And then that really does tie into what you talked about. We've been talking about, we're in the industrial revolution 4.0. Yet up until this school year, we were still educating in that 1.0, 2.0 model of the manufacturing line. And so to that personalized learning piece, again, we're now creating wall-to-wall pathways starting in 8th grade that are very competency-based and they're career-based. And it's not about getting our kids to high school graduation. It's about what do they want to be ready to do when they leave us. And we really are allowing them to help create that personalized approach. So it's not, I wouldn't say it's just the digital piece. The digital piece has forced us to think about teaching and learning completely different, personalizing kids, how we assess their learning, and holding ourselves accountable for their learning versus we offered it and they take it or not. So those are the conversations that we're having in Piper right now.
Great. Good to know. Okay. So, Dr. Tanya Merrigan, what are your thoughts on that?
I would say we're having some of the same conversations here in Blue Valley. I do agree with Jessica wholeheartedly. It's got to be more than just high school graduation. It's what are we doing to get our students ready for life, ready for career? And so those discussions are happening. But you mentioned earlier about these students who are missing, that 3 to 15%. For us, it was about 3%. I don't know if they're missing, but our enrollment dropped by 3%. So we are really looking for those students, looking to see if they're ready to come back. We are looking at next year. We know the vast majority of our students and families want to come back full in person, but we know that there is a small segment of them that this virtual thing really worked for them. It worked well. And so how are we going to provide for them? So your comments about personalizing those experiences, our high school students want flexibility. They want to take a couple of classes virtually, but they really want to come in for band or for art class or for something in person perhaps. So those are the discussions that we're having and just trying to get the logistics of it all down sometimes create barriers for us, but it is absolutely something we're talking about, and technology can help us transition there. And I don't think we'll go back to normal. Like, I don't think there is a normal anymore. We have to figure out what it's going to look like in 2021 and beyond.
Thank you. Good. Ivy, what are your thoughts on that same topic, the true transformation to new models?
So we are on the Missouri side, and the county that our district is located in is actually south of Kansas City. And so our county is a little more lax with the regulations and things that have been imposed. But our district has decided to be a little stricter with that. And we actually saw at the beginning of school, when we publicized that we were giving an in-person option starting in August, we actually saw some people come from districts outside because we were giving that in-person option, and that's what they wanted. And their districts were saying, nope, we're going to be closed for the foreseeable future.
Yeah. Okay.
So we will continue to offer those virtual things, especially for secondaries where we see requests for that, students and parents. But it's interesting, we're being pushed in that direction of offering virtual, but then we're also comparing the amount of failing grades at our secondary grade levels that we saw a year ago, and it's doubled. So it's kind of a little interesting caveat there.
Interesting. All right. Well, I have a bunch more questions to ask, but I want to make sure the audience is typing in their questions so that we can get them asked of the panel. And then what I really want to turn my attention to now, because it's alluded to in every conversation, and Jessica, I think you brought up a little bit the social emotional side, but I feel like a lot of superintendents have been telling us in different areas of the country that they've had to start to think with, as we roll into 2021 and 22, and there's more coming backness, intentional socialization. So normally schools are structured so that, the socialization occurs within the construct of the academics, right? So talk to me about your thoughts on intentional socialization, even for the ones that might be remote, but on campus and the remote. What are your thoughts? And I'm going to start this time with Tonya. Oh, you're on mute, Tonya. Something happened with.
Sorry, you'd think I would have that figured out by now.
Yeah.
We are, in the process right now of doing enrollment, and remote will be an option, absolutely. But full in-person will be, by and large, the majority of the kids that we will have do this. But I do think that there is a blended learning aspect of all of this, even with our kids full in-person, is how do we leverage the technology that we have to ensure that we can meet those needs.
Okay. All right, Jessica. Same question.
So when you ask that question and the intentionality, what I think about is, again, this idea of preparing students in a very personalized manner, and especially what do they want to do when they leave us. And so I think of, as we're allowing students to have more ownership and driving their learning and their focus of study in this kind of academy or pathway piece, I think that's going to open up a beautiful part of bringing kids together that may not have been together in the past, in these academies or focus areas. So their like-mindedness can work together. Like Tanya and I could sit on an airplane and we would look, we could look up and it would, the flight would be over, right? Because we love education. We have a lot to talk about. Every time we get together, we're like, we have to go. And it's fun for me to get to talk to her because we like the same things. And so I think about, but what if we would have been in high school together and her schedule would have been different than mine and we never would have connected, but we both love the field of education. So I do think the academic piece can bring kids together, but the intentionality of bringing kids that have the same interests together and them driving their learning. And I think that's going to be a great way that we can be intentional with the things that they love and that they want to study and they want to collaborate and be creative, that's how we can infuse some of that social emotional piece.
Yeah, I totally agree. Okay, Ivy, what about your thoughts and what the district is doing for intentional social interaction?
So we actually are planning for summer school, and it's been determined that summer school will be in person, and those students who have been those ghosts, those MIA students, will be, mandated to attend as much as we can mandate anyone to do anything, but required to come in and to get some of that learning back that they've been missing for. So having that in person, and then also not having that push for technology. So some of these students, they've lost their connections. So getting them back in a classroom with a teacher, with their peers, but then also some of them, it might be that the technology is a barrier. And so giving them those options to be there and to demonstrate learning in other ways.
Excellent. Good idea. And I am hearing a lot of like boot camp ideas from districts. They're like, we're going to have a boot camp on like, Google or Microsoft or whatever. And parents even really want to get involved. So that brings me to my next question, and I'll have you go first, Jessica, is that during this pandemic, parents became another whole wing of the delivery mechanism. And I don't think they're ever going to go away now. They're going to be like, their face is going to be in your face all the time now, at least a good portion of them. And so that was going to mean like new programs of involvement. What are your thoughts on, retaining sort of the, involvement that you got?
That's a great question. And I chuckle. Part of the struggle we've had this year are the constraints that were put on us by the county health department and just the continual communication with parents. So I'm going to give you a very old school answer, but I think what I've learned is how very regular, consistent communication with parents is my friend. So although, when I was a principal, I sent out a weekly newsletter. I didn't think as a superintendent, I would be sending out a weekly communication blast, but that's what I've ended up doing. So, and I've realized they liked it. They like hearing from me on a consistent basis. And so I think having some of those structures, and especially 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade parents, sometimes they stop being as involved in coming in the school building, with their kids, or if their kids aren't tied to things. So that communication piece has been really important. But then having nights that we're teaching parents about Canvas, about Google, about the standards, and having personalized learning and academies and tying that in. But they are such a critical piece of the educational process. And if we don't invite them, what we realized is they will show up in different ways. So they will hop on a Zoom if their questions aren't being answered, So it's a great, I appreciate you asking that. And I'm not sure I have a great answer yet, except we have to keep thinking about it and communicating with them because they are such an important piece of the process.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So Tanya, your thoughts on that?
Well, we honestly just finished a meeting where we were talking about kind of the three-legged stool for us: students, teachers, and parents. And we need perception data from all three of them. We need all three of them working together, all three of them buying in. And I wholeheartedly agree with Jessica. Parents were very involved this year. If you're a student, if you had a little kiddo that you did virtual, you selected virtual for your student, you had to be involved, because a first grader, you just have to be involved in this. So parents are essential. Parents have been advocating for their kids to come back because they see the need for it. They're watching their kids at home and seeing the need for them to connect. So I would say that parents will be a critical component of our work going forward. The other thing I think that we've missed is that we've had a luxury of having some parent volunteers in all of our buildings, elementary, middle, and high school, and we just haven't been able to do that this year. We've kept visitors out completely. Only essential personnel really to kind of keep numbers down. But I just was in a meeting last week where some of our principals were saying, you know what, we miss having them there. We miss having that connection, working with our PTA or PTOs. The other thing that they do is so much for activities within our buildings, which promotes the SEL. Students are so invested in the schools because sometimes of the carnival or some other traditional activity that they have. So parents are going to be crucial for us moving forward.
Good. Well, thank you. Ivy, your thoughts on parent involvement going forward?
I mean, echoing what both Dr. Merrigan and Dr. Dain said, and then also from the perspective of the tech side, helping parents with that are struggling with technology. And, you can never make everyone happy, but we will run into a lot of parents who are very frustrated because they need help with something. And then a lot of times you run into parents who are like, I don't know how teachers do this all day, every day. Why would you choose to spend your life, teaching kids? A parent like shared a couple weeks ago about how he was like watching his kid's Zoom class, and after like 5 minutes, he was ready to like yell at somebody else's kid. And so, it's nice to, being vulnerable and putting yourself out there for parents to see is a scary thing. But I think a lot of parents their eyes have been open to the way, school is today, and maybe have a better appreciation for what teachers do for their kids and with their kids every day.
Totally agree with that. And we have had people say there's a mixed bag in this whole thing with parents, and that some parents were like, holy cow, we really respect you now. In other words, they're like, why are you doing that? And critical of every little thing, it was kind of like a mixed bag. So interesting. So, well, we had Crystal Howard make a little comment on here, and Crystal, if we can unmute her, please, Doug. Coming at it from Florida Virtual School, a lot of online, saying parents are essential as students. I'm wondering, because it's an online perspective, if you can share, Crystal, really quickly, what that perspective is, because these are, on-campus schools, and you're mostly online. Can you share what parents are doing with you guys?
Sure. So first I want to say, we've been a virtual school for 23 years, but that was virtual as an option, as a choice for students and families and districts, a gap filler in some cases. That it changes everything when everyone is forced to go home to learn and teach. And so I'm sensitive to that. But what we've always done well is involve the parents, because we knew if these students, for whatever reason, have to take one course or they're full-time online, their parent has to be involved for this to work. And so we do a welcome call and monthly calls, and we're available to parents. And so there is a learning curve. And what we heard, I mentioned this earlier, teachers said, I'm so frustrated last spring. All I did was teach parents. But a lot of them, obviously the struggles have not gone away, but they've changed. And so parents got through the Zoom learning curve like everyone else in the world, love it or hate it. And they've gotten through a lot of learning curves. These teachers should feel victorious that for what they have helped these parents to do and to learn, because it was on the teachers to teach them all. And and again, you mentioned it, that's a good thing. And then it can be a bad thing. I'm sure there are some teachers that absolutely love it. It also fills the gap. If you had those teachers coming into your classroom, or those parents, and they were, I used to volunteer and go do reading time. So, if you miss those parents being in your traditional classroom, this is similar, because they're in your virtual classroom. But again, if they come in and they're critical, or if you're doing traffic control, I feel it. I've been there when I was a teacher online in a different scenario. So I love hearing it. I'm glad it's kind of morphed. I don't think the challenges are going to go away. They're just going to change.
Yeah, and I didn't think that much of the burden side too. So thank you for your comments, Crystal. More traffic, because we did talk in the hybrid logistics workshop that we did yesterday about the biggest underseen barrier and burden that occurred as everyone went to digital was digital traffic. Because when you're in a physical classroom, it's like you wrote something on the board, here's your homework, read chapter blah, blah, or whatever, or go here, go to that link. But now in digital, it's like you got to put the stuff in your LMS if you have one, or make sure people know what folder to go to, and then your traffic is email out and email back and assignment out, and 60 assignments come back, and you got to do all that and reroute them. The digital routing is the most overlooked added burden. And then when you pile on family emails coming in and hitting you, and then more stuff coming down from above about requirements, it's kind of messy. And it's a real burden. So I want to go to that mixology planning that you guys are doing as leaders is like, there's a lot of tech on the table right now. I'm sure you got hit with 9 million people trying to call you over the pandemic, right? The average district's carrying 1,000 apps at least. Houston ISD has over 2 million digital learning objects and apps in their marketplace internally. What are you guys doing to deal with that sort of nuclear bomb that went off on the tech side? Tanya, do you want to go first?
Yeah. So the staff that you had on yesterday, I think it was yesterday, are the ones who are dealing with that. So our blended learning team has had many discussions. We started some of those discussions last year because as you know, different teachers found different things they liked. All of a sudden, we had all these apps out there, and we can't support all of those things. And so we're having discussions around how do we vet these first of all to ensure that they're safe for students, and that we can manage those and we can support those and we can provide the professional learning that teachers need around those, and without hindering teachers, without like holding them back, those people who want to get out there in front of it. But it is a challenge because when you said, you know, over 2 million, I wouldn't even want to guess how many we have. It's certainly not that many, but it's in the thousands, I'm sure. And so how do we manage that? And do we need that many? I don't know. So it is something we're continuing to wrestle with.
Thank you. All right. So Jessica.
So before I jump into that, another piece that I think is in the mix, if you will, is something that both Ivy and Tanya touched on that we've had to work through is even increasing technology staff to support parents, right? Like you can't just forget that. Like now we have to have a help desk that's open from 7 a.m. in the morning until, well, how long do we want to go at night? Because homework doesn't just stop at 5 o'clock. A lot of parents are starting to support homework at 6, 7 when they get home. So I think that's a piece that, you know, that wasn't in our budget to think about. And, you know, it kind of goes to your question with parents and what's next is all of that structural piece, the infrastructure, the human resource piece that we didn't think for parents. So that's one of the things that we've been working on. For us, maybe a little bit of a mixed blessing was that because we weren't one-to-one, we didn't really get to that place where we had all of these apps out there and everybody adding it. So, you know, we leaned into actually some of Tanya's people that we're in touch with about, hey, what is the process that you're using? And we were able to kind of get ahead of that from the very beginning. So again, to Tanya's point of a process where we're vetting things out, you know, sometimes teachers don't realize, well, this app is free. Well, it's free as you work through the first 5 modules. But after that, then it's going to cost you $20 a month or $20 per kid. And they just because we haven't done that. And so, you know, we have to think about our resources differently. We've added on a technology fee onto our learning fee for next year because we're behind and we realize we need to have people and a process and time accounted for that mixology kind of, you know, idea that you bring up. So for us, it's the structures before we can even get to actually making the decisions. It's that we've staffed appropriately and have a process in place.
Yeah, excellent. Excellent. And I'm glad you mentioned the time of it all, because one of the top 5 technology shopping behaviors in our national survey was searches for chatbots, you know, who would auto answer things for people, pre-programmed, and then outside support for after hours, like hire some outside service who's going to help you with your math. And then we also had T-Mobile sponsor a paper basically advising leadership to buy their teachers a second phone, because you run into like legal issues of all of this traffic over the teacher's personal phone coming in at night. And we had a superintendent in Utah say, you know, basically he had to tell teachers, stop answering the phone after 11 o'clock. You know, what are you doing? And, you know, people, teenage, you know, because the older kids might sleep in later and, you know, they are up later and they're calling you. So crazy time. All right. So Ivy, what are your thoughts on this same sort of mixology thing?
So as Leilani knows, data governance and app resource vetting is kind of my jam. So we have very maybe a couple hundred apps available because we have a curriculum approval process, and any technology resource we run through that. So it is vetted through alignment with the curriculum, all of those things, and then it is bounced over to me if there's a technology aspect, and then I vet for all of those other compliance things according to our data governance policy for the district, and then send it back for final approval on curriculum. And then if it's a paid something, then I'm actually provide a budget code, and then I do the actual acquisition of it. So we do the ordering, PO generating and ordering for through the technology department. So it has worked very well. And we were pretty solid in it. So we started it a couple years ago, and then last year we were pretty solid in it. So then when things started, just becoming craziness with all these apps and free resources being offered and that kind of stuff, we already had these policies and procedures that our staff knew pretty well. So we and we're actually weeding out, and we're going through apps and looking at the apps that we have offered through our self-service for just even for iPads. And there's a couple hundred, and I'm like, no, there's no way we're using that many. We need to get rid of some. So then running those things that have been, oh, well, we've always been able to use that. We've always been, okay, well, we only started this curriculum approval process 2 years ago. So let's make sure that we've gone back and like retroactively vetted and approved all of those things that we are already using.
That's smart. Yeah, there's a lot of districts now, particularly the bigger ones who've been in this fray for a while. They're already talking about what they say is selective retirement of some things for when it's duplicated, because it's all about money and how much money you're spending, and free is like a puppy. So stop doing that. So let's go on to that penultimate question about where are you getting the money to do all this stuff? So, CARES Act blew through this last year, but there's still a lot of money in it that people haven't claimed. And states have gotten, like extensions on it. And then CARES Act 2 passed in December, and it's 4 times the size of CARES Act 1, which pumped up the market by $7.5 billion in total spend in tech. Nationally in the US, all types of schools, public, private. So I don't know how much that money is flowing yet, and I've heard it's not really flowing yet, but what are your thoughts on what else you need? Like if you could like have all the money in the world, because maybe it's true, there's going to be this big blob come down from the feds. What would be on your wish list? Is it more people? Is it like the right tech? Or kind of where are you coming from on that? So Tanya, do you want to go first?
Absolutely. I would say for me, it's being able to pay our amazing educators what they deserve to help with some of this work that we need to do with kids. So I believe we're set with technology in good space. I believe now it's about the time and the money to pay teachers, to have additional teachers to help with interventions with small groups with kids, to pay them in the summer. That's really where I think that money should come from. And our state has rolled out some of the ESSER 2. We have what is that? Elementary and Secondary Schools Relief Act.
Yeah.
It's distributed on the Title I formula, which both for Jessica and I is not really helpful. However, our state did help us out a little bit, and we will take any dollar we can get. But we are starting to see some of that.
Well, I like what you just said about focusing on the human aspects, because one of the things you said was maybe we need additional people to do X. And that is the drive towards personalization.
Yep.
And it's a very competitive move to be making. And I totally understand where you're coming from on that. So great. All right. So Jessica.
Yeah, I would echo a lot of what Tanya said. For us in our school district, we used all of our ESSER 1 just for technology. So we got the one-to-one devices, and then it was crucial for us to have the learning management system, which we adopted Canvas. So the technology piece, man, that money allowed us really to do some things that the district hadn't been able to do. And then to also be thinking, now we need to be on an adoption cycle that, technology is just as important as the resource adoption. And Ivy did a nice job of talking with that. Like Tanya, now we are really in full mode of learning recovery and learning acceleration. And so a lot of our second pot of that CARES funding is going to go to summer learning activities and thinking about summer learning in a whole new way. It's not just remedial summer school, but competency-based, innovative. How do we accelerate learners when we want everyone to be on grade level? And some of our kids haven't been in school for 12 or 13 or 14, and by then 15 or 16 months. So we're going to use a lot of it on learning opportunities for kids, that recovery of learning, and then moving forward, how do we want to do things differently? So again, our guaranteed and viable curriculum, innovative strategies, paying teachers time to come in and learn and, say, hey, thank you for investing your time. We know it's June and you're doing this for August, and so we want to pay you. So to echo Tanya, a lot of our second round is going to go towards people in preparing for the future, an educational platform that's really going to benefit kids.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you said that. It also sounds to me like you might not know it yet, but you're going to be in the market soon for hybrid logistics, because the intersection of the usual PDF or spreadsheet pacing guide with an algorithmic 4-level calendar is coming soon to a theater near you. That's the type of technology the market has started to talk about, because the last bastion of non-automation is pacing. And it's like, here's the teacher. My pacing guide's over here. Somebody did a lot of work to plot it on calendars. And then I got to go look at it. And then I got to go look over here at this other thing. And then I got to figure out what my schedule is, how many hours and what days. This is only Tuesday and Thursday and only for this grade and then the other grade. And then I'm doing this online over here. And then I got to figure out my lesson plan by looking at this and looking at that and then figuring this out. And it's a mess. So logistics is maybe on the horizon for you. Well, thank you. Okay, so Ivy, what are your thoughts on the same thing?
Staffing for sure. The technology department, we had to cut 2 positions last spring, and then we've had another person leave for another position, and then their position hasn't been filled. So from a year ago, we're down 3 people, and we've added 2,100 devices to our district's tech demands. So staffing for sure. I also think that, if this is end all be all, having an LMS that is going to do what we need it to do, and be very useful K-12, very student friendly, very parent friendly, but then and we call it the unicorn. So not just an LMS, but those other factors where you can kind of have a dashboard viewing the whole child. So you could see attendance, you could see grades, you could see assignments, what's missing. You could see test scores, discipline referrals, those kinds of things. So if anyone out there is listening, it's called the unicorn because it doesn't exist. So if somebody wants to make that and, make $1 million, that'd be fantastic. I'm
so glad you said that, because I think about this all the time. It's such a disparate map right now. It's such insanity. There's so many point solutions, but nobody understanding the entirety. And I find that fascinating, because it doesn't happen in other industries. The complexity here that you guys are dealing with is unlike any other industry by just giant orders of magnitude. I mean, who else has thousands of pieces of software? Does healthcare? No. Manufacturing maybe has 2 major systems and an HR and financial system, and that's it, right? And retail, 1 system. And you guys have 1,000 things, or 7,000, and it's humanity. But here's the caveat, and I'm just going to tell you guys this from a software perspective, because, I come from encryption software and media. The map of things will probably always change because you're dealing with human knowledge and culture shift that'll never change, that'll never stop changing, right? And that's always going to be true. Somebody's going to come up with an innovative new way to do math tomorrow. You guys know how this is. You've been around long enough. It's going to keep changing. So you have to start thinking as yourselves, as system leaders, of how do you take those atomized bits of knowledge and allow them to change, the people that you use to change, but you create an architecture that is beautifully flexible. And that also changes the structure of how your execution mechanism and your delivery is. So I think you have big challenges. I am not jealous of, being in your shoes. I am commiserating with you wholeheartedly. This is hard and I'm super proud of you. And I want to sort of leave off on your final comments on your hopes for this year and what you hope to do for your kids and, and the teachers you lead, the parents that you lead. So Tanya, you first.
Well, my hope for the remainder of this school year is to end on somewhat of a normalcy for kids, to bring them back, for them to have that social interaction with their friends, safely, of course, to be able to really hone in on the learning and really kind of full court press fourth quarter here, to get them caught up as much as we can, and then to continue that through the summer, and then to leverage all of that and to really, I think that ending somewhat normal this year is going to give us the opportunity to leverage into next year, to use the good things that we've learned out of this year with that personalized interaction that teachers are so good at with our students as we come back next fall. And so, I'm really looking forward to that day of having our kids back, having our teachers know how to teach in person. That's the known part, and they've learned so much, and our teachers are fabulous. They have done so much, and I can't wait to see what they're going to transform education here in the future.
Yeah, you're gonna have to have like a celebration, just like I can't imagine like hearts bursting everywhere, like being able to be together again. I remember being a teenager, and just the moment's going to be precious. Okay, so Jessica.
Well, I'm a little jealous that Tanya got to answer first, because I think my answer is going to be fairly close to that. As I think about my hope, I know that our educators are absolutely exhausted, and I know at times they feel like they're failing. And so a big hope of mine is that they realize they're rock stars, and that they can get some rest and recoup, and that, to Tanya's point, we leverage. You guys can do anything you want to do. And let's not lose the fact that we were maybe forced into doing some things differently. Let's not lose the good parts of it and personalizing it, so leveraging that this needs to change, for the future, not only for teachers, but for kids. Tanya made a great point. We have some kids, they don't want to go back to the old way. This way was amazing for them. They got up, they did school, they went to work, they came back, did art class, and then they went to football practice or whatever the case would be. So, we need to think about doing things differently for them. And then second, what keeps me up at night is the front and the back ends of these learning gaps. So for my youngest learners, literacy and the numeracy and ensuring that they're set, we only do kindergarten, first grade, second grade one time. And so for these kids that maybe have gaps, maybe they needed to be at home because they have an aging grandparent, and they had parents that were trying to fill gaps. And then my other concern are my high school kids that are now, they're credit deficient. And how do we fill those gaps so that this doesn't change their trajectory as human beings, that it doesn't change, like do we have kids that aren't now going to be able to get into college or be competitive with their ACT or getting a scholarship? So I think leveraging the positive and then accelerating and filling gaps for those places of learning, both for kids and teachers. Those are my hopes as we round the corner, and finish this spring really strong.
Well, awesome. Well, Ivy, I don't know how you're going to follow that, but have at it. Hopes for the future.
Very similar, really. One thing a little different is that the Missouri State Teachers Association, one of the teachers unions in Missouri, actually did a survey of certified staff in Missouri, and 60-some% had seriously considered leaving the teaching profession altogether based on this year alone. So my hopes would be that we are resilient and we do not lose good teachers because of this year. And then, kind of what Dr. Dain was saying, to take it a step further with when we get students back in person full time, we need to not only do the SEL, but trauma informed teaching and instruction, because we've lost track of a lot of kids, and there are some lifestyles that our students have to deal with that would shock us. So making sure that we get those kids back, in their safe place of school, and just kind of how to deal with those challenges, and how to reassure everybody, that things are going to be okay now.
Yeah, and I love what you just said, and here's my favorite part for rounding this off is that a lot of teachers wanted to quit in the last year. They do want to retain quality online capacities, but they're people, 99% of them, and we've isolated them at home in a spare bedroom or their kitchen table, and it's been just as hard on them as everybody else, and they're all going to go through periods of grief on this. And celebrations are upcoming, togetherness is upcoming, and it's kind of like looking forward to prom, a little bit. It's like, this is going to be great, and we got to keep focusing on that. So anyway, so thank you guys for being with us virtually this year. We're hoping to come back to your neck of the woods next year and ask one of you to host us on your campus when we come in, so we can share you what the next level is from the Learning Council National Research. And Jessica, I'm going to fix the word Missouri on the slide before this video goes out nationally. So I don't want to be embarrassed by not knowing you were in a different state. Hello. So thank you guys both so much. And our hearts go out to you for your continued diligence to drive learning no matter what. And thank you for all that you do. And thanks for being with us today. Okay. All right. Bye. So we're going to wrap up here, everyone. I want to make sure we do a final thank you of all of our sponsors for this event. They are awesome companies. We choose them through a lot of hard work. ClassLink, Trevera, No Story, Scholastic, Mobile Mind, Renaissance, Lightspeed, Identity Automation, and Florida Virtual School. Thank you guys all for sponsoring, and thanks for being with us. And I'm going to let you go now, move about the country freely if you want to. And thank you for being with us. Goodbye for now.